Good evening, learners. My name is Mr. Paul Chilola once again. I represent BLACKSLIDES Online Secondary School. Welcome to this lesson. We are going to be looking at solving quadratic equations by a method called completing the square. If you are watching this video lesson on our YouTube channel, consider subscribing to the channel so that every time we upload new material there, you are notified on time. Invite your friends to join us. Inform them that it's possible to learn on this platform during this holiday time. Remember that the holiday lessons are going to run up to 6th September. Welcome, learners. So we meet now for a mathematics lesson on a topic called quadratic equations by completing the square. Remember that quadratic equations can be solved in numerous ways. You can solve quadratic equations by a method called factorization method. You can solve quadratic equations using completing square method, which is this one we are going to discuss now. Quadratic equations can also be solved using the quadratic formula. And you can also solve quadratic equations using a method called graphical method. So in this lesson, we are going to dwell on using the completing the square method to solve quadratic equations. Welcome, learners. Invite your friends wherever they are. We are so much pleased to have learners from as far as Uganda, Kenya, Namibia, and other parts of Africa. You are all welcome. It pleases us to have you on this platform. Inform your friends that it's possible to learn on this platform. If all you want is to join our main classroom, which is the paid classroom, you can send us a text message or just call these numbers. We are going to respond to you and guide you through the joining process. Welcome, learners. So without wasting your precious time, let's get down to the business of the day. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to define a quadratic equation and identify its standard form. ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, where a is not 0. Explain the principle of the completing the square method, a method of solving quadratic equations. Solve quadratic equations by completing the square when the coefficient of x squared, this one here, is 1. So in other words, when a is 1. And solve quadratic equations by completing the square when the coefficient of x squared is not 1, is any number. Welcome, learners. So these are the areas that we're going to dwell on. Welcome to the first objective, defining a quadratic equation and identifying its standard form. So what is a quadratic equation? We shall define a quadratic equation as an equation in which the highest power, which is called the exponent of the variable x, is 2. So any equation in which the highest power of x or any variable is 2, such an equation is called quadratic equation. So the word quadratic comes from the word square, meaning the variable is squared. So the standard form of the quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So in this case, a is a coefficient of x squared, but must not be 0, because if it's 0, then the whole thing is going to collapse to a linear equation, because anything multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. So if you put 0 there, it means this x squared is going to disappear. So you end up having bx plus c equal to 0, which is basically a linear equation. And b in this case is a coefficient of x. It can be any number, negative or positive, whole number or fraction. And c is a number, which is a constant term. In this case, x is the unknown variable, which has to be solved for. So that's a quadratic equation and its standard form. Welcome, learners. All right. So it is important to note that a should never be equal to 0. So this a here should never be equal to 0. If a is 0 here, the equation is no longer quadratic. It becomes a linear equation, because you end up having bx plus c equals to 0. So since the highest power after this is multiplied by 0, this is going to collapse. So the highest power will end up being 1. Any expression or equation in which the highest power of the unknown is 1 is linear. So examples of quadratic equations include x squared plus 5x plus 6. So in this case, a is equal to 1. There's a 1 this side here. And b is 5, positive 5. While c is 6. So when solving quadratic equations, you should always be mindful of this. You should know what the values of a, b, and c are. Another one is 2x squared minus 7x plus 3 is equal to 0. So in this case, a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 7. Take note that we are taking the whole negative 7, not just 7. The sign in front of the coefficient is very, very important. So here it's positive 5, but although we have not indicated that it's positive here, it's positive 5. And c is equal to 3, also positive. Another one is 5x squared minus 20 is equal to 0. So for this one, a is 5, B is 0 because it doesn't exist in this expression, and C is minus 20. So make it a habit all the time. When given a quadratic equation, you should be able to identify the values of A, B, and C. This is going to be very useful when solving equations. So examples that are not quadratic equations include this one here. You have 3x plus 4. Since the highest power of x is 1 here, it's a linear equation, it's not quadratic. Another one is x to the power 3 minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 0. So the highest power here is 3. And an equation in which the highest power is 3 is called a cubic equation. Cubic means power 3, so it's not quadratic, this expression. Alright, so in summary, we are saying a quadratic equation has the highest power of 2, and its standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. And the coefficient of a must never be 0, because if it's a 0, it means you end up having a linear equation. Alright, so I'd like you to identify the values of a, b, and c in the following equations: x squared plus b plus x squared, x squared plus 8x plus 15 is equal to 0. 3x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals to 0. 4x squared plus 9 equals to 0. So in this case, for number 1, a is equal to 1. So there's a 1 there. And the b is 8, positive 8. While c is 15, this one. For number 2, a is 3, b is minus 5, and c is minus 2. Well, number 3, a is 4, b is 0, because it's not shown there. It doesn't exist, so b is 0 and c is 9. Welcome once again. So this is very, very important in solving quadratic equations to identify the values of a, b, and c. As you see soon, when we start solving quadratic equations by a method called completing the square. The second objective is requiring us to explain the principle of completing the square method as a method of solving quadratic equations. So what is completing the square? What does it mean? Completing the square is a method of solving quadratic equations by rewriting a quadratic expression as a perfect square, plus or minus a number. We're going to see how this is done. So completing the square is a method of solving quadratic equations by completing or rewriting a quadratic expression as a perfect square, plus or minus a number. So the method changes the quadratic equation into a form that can be solved easily by taking the square root of both sides. That's how completing the method of completing square the square works. Alright, of course, you'll not be asked to give a definition of completing square in an exam or to explain what is involved. No, but you'll be required to apply the method to solve real-life equations. Welcome, learners. So, consider the quadratic expression here. x squared plus bx. So the target is to make this a perfect square. That's the goal, first and foremost, for you to solve quadratic equations using the method of completing the square. You need to turn the given expression into a perfect square. So to make x squared plus bx a perfect square, you take the coefficient of x, which is b. So the coefficient of x here is b. Then divide it by 2. Divide it by 2. Divide b by 2. Then square the result. So take whatever number this is, divide it by 2, square it, and then add this value to both sides of the equation. So when you do that, you are said to have turned the given equation as a perfect square. Take note that this side here, the coefficient of x squared is 1 for now. Alright, so this now has been turned into a perfect square like this. So first of all, we divided the coefficient of x here by 2, and then square it, raise it to the power 2. So eventually this becomes x, open brackets, x plus b over 2, close brackets, to the power 2. So this is called a perfect square. Perfect square. So easy to do. That's the process which will take you to solving an equation by the method called completing squares. Welcome to Black Slides, your school, the place where you learn the sciences, namely physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, agriculture, and the other demand subjects. Let's take an example. Write x squared plus 6x as a perfect square. So the first step is to consider the coefficient of x, in this case is 6, divide 6 by 2, which is 3, and then square the answer. So when you square this 3, it gives you 9. Then add a 9. Add 9 to the given expression. This. Rewriting this as a perfect square is going to be x squared plus 3 close brackets. Sorry, open brackets, x plus 3 close brackets to the power 2. So this is called a perfect square. So therefore this expression is just as good as x squared, sorry, open brackets, x plus 3 close brackets raised to the power 2 minus 9. That's a method called completing the square. We shall see how useful this technique is when it comes to solving quadratic equations using a method called completing the square, which is covered in this lesson. Let's appreciate another example. X squared, write x squared minus 8, write x squared minus 8x as a perfect square. So the coefficient of x is minus 8. So divide it by 2. It will give you minus 4. Then square the answer. Square this to give you 16. When you square minus 4 is 16. Then add this to the given expression. When factorized, it's going to look like this. So this expression is going to be x minus 4 squared. Therefore, x squared minus 8x minus is equal to x minus 4 squared minus 16. So kindly go through these examples and convince yourself that you can handle problems of this nature. So why do we complete the square then? Completing the square helps you to solve quadratic equations that cannot be factorized easily. So in other words, completing the square method is a tool to solve an equation that cannot be factorized. So it helps us to rewrite quadratic expressions as perfect squares, as you have seen. It will also help you to find the roots, which are the solutions of quadratic equations. Other than that, it will help you to find the turning point of a quadratic graph, but this is going to be a lesson for another day. Welcome learners. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that every time we upload new material, you are notified on time. So in summary, we are saying to turn an expression into a perfect square, you divide the coefficient of x by 2, square it, add this value to both sides of the equation, then you rewrite the left-hand side as a perfect square. Then solve the equation by taking the square root of both sides. So that's the method of completing squares as a tool to solve quadratic equations. So kindly complete the squares for these expressions. We have x squared plus 10x, x squared minus 12x, x squared plus 4x. So kindly do this and share your results with me to the numbers that I shared earlier on. Welcome learners. Invite your friends, let them join us on this platform so that they can as well learn. Don't waste your holiday just like that walking around in town or elsewhere. Come to this platform and learn. If you're a parent, please equip your children with tools that will help them to learn from this platform. All they need is a good phone, as long as it supports internet and YouTube, so they can learn here. You can also enroll into our paid classes. Just send us a text message indicating your interest to join us. We are going to guide you through the joining process there. Welcome, learners. Welcome to our third objective for this lesson, solving quadratic equations by completing the square when the coefficient of x squared is 1. So in this objective, we learn how to solve quadratic equations where the coefficient of x squared is 1 using the method of completing the square. So the steps of solving an equation by completing the square involves the following steps. So arrange the equation so that the constant term is on the right hand side. That's the first thing to do. Take half of the coefficient of x, square it, then add the square to both sides of the equation. Then you rewrite the left hand side as a perfect square. Take the square root of both sides and then solve for x. As simple as that. These are the steps that you follow to solve an equation by a method called completing the square. Let's look at an example. Solve x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals to 0. So first of all, move the constant to the right. So move this, the minus 7 to the right. This side is going to be positive 7. And then take half of the x, which is the coefficient of x here, and square it. So half of 6 is 3. So when you square it, it becomes 9. And then add 9 to both sides of the equation. So we add 9 to this side. You also add 9 to this side. So adding 7 to 9 is 16. Then you factorize this. X squared plus 6x plus 9 will give you two similar brackets, which when you combine will give you a perfect square. This is the perfect square. Then take the square roots of both sides. So take the square root of this side will give you x plus 3. The square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. Remember that the square root of a number is either positive or negative. So square root of 16 is positive, minus or positive, plus or minus 4. Square root of this side is just x plus 3. Okay, then you solve for x. So you find that x is either 4 minus 3, which is minus 1, or x is equal to minus 4 minus 3, which is minus 7. So x is either minus 7 or minus 1. Excuse me. So take the square root of both sides. I think I missed a point there. So it will give you positive 3. X plus 3 equals to plus or minus 4. Then find the values of x. So to do that, you simply take the positive 3 to the other side. It will give you minus 3 plus 4, which is 1. Another value will be minus 3 minus 4, which is minus 7. So the values of x therefore are 1 or minus 7. You see how powerful the method of completing the square is when it comes to solving quadratic equations. Let's look at another example. X squared minus 8x plus 7 is equal to 0. So the first thing you do is move the constant. So move the constant to the right. This is positive 7, so it goes to the right, it will be minus 7. Then take half of the coefficient of x. In this case, half of minus 8, which is minus 4. So then you square it. So squaring it will give you 16. Then add this 16 to both sides of the equation. So you add 16, add 16 this side, add 16 this side, and simplify. Minus 7 plus 16 is 9, and rewriting this as a perfect square will give you, open brackets, x minus 4 close brackets squared. Then you take the square root of both sides. So taking the square root of both sides, will give you x minus 4 equals to plus or minus 3. Square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. Remembering all the time that the square root of any number is plus or minus. Then solving for x, you take the minus 4 to the right, so you have 4 plus 3, which is 7, or x is going to be 4 minus 3, which is 1. So therefore the values of x will be minus 7 and minus 1. Sorry, x will be equal to 7 or x is equal to 1. Welcome, dear learners. So the key points to note regarding solving quadratic equations using the method of completing the square is that this method works directly when the coefficient of x is 1. Always add the same number to both sides of the equation, and remember that taking the square root gives two possible answers, positive and negative. I would like you to work on these three problems. Solve the following by completing the square. X squared plus 4x minus 5 equal to 0. X squared minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. And the x squared plus 10x plus 9 is equal to 0. So solve these equations using the method of completing the square, and share your answers with me. For the time being, we would like to stop here. When we meet again, we shall look at examples that involve equations in which the coefficient of x squared is greater than 0. Excuse me, is greater than 1. Remember that in this lesson we covered equations in which the coefficient of x squared is 1. What if the coefficient is 2, 3, 4, and other numbers, minus 7, minus 8, and so on? So that's going to be the lesson of the day, another day. Welcome, learners. Let me go for now. We meet again in the next lesson. Bye-bye.